in the quiet suburbs of Elmwood, Pennsylvania, where cul-de-sacs glowed under the soft, amber glow of streetlights, and the crisp scent of October leaves hung in the air, Sarah and Tom believed they'd stumbled into a dream come true. The Victorian Manor at 113 Maple Lane was a steal, snapped up at an estate sale in the fall of 2023. Its towering gables pierced the sky like jagged teeth, and its stained glass windows caught the moonlight, fracturing it into eerie prisms that danced across the overgrown lawn. Ivy clung to the sprawling porch, twisting in patterns that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. The realtor, Harold, a wiry man with sweat beading on his brow despite the autumn chill, rushed them through the paperwork. His eyes darted to the shadows pooling in the corners of the foyer. His voice clipped as he praised the house's unique character and fixer-upper potential. He avoided lingering, practically shoving the keys into their hands before hurrying to his car. Sarah, a graphic designer with a soft spot for old things, saw only charm in the warped floorboards and the grand staircase that creaked like a sigh. Tom, a software engineer tethered to logic, saw a project to occupy his weekends, a canvas for their future. Neither noticed how the house's windows glinted, not with reflected light, but with something deeper, like the eyes of a predator sizing up its prey. They moved in on a Saturday, the air sharp with the promise of early frost. Neighbors waved from neatly trimmed lawns, their smiles polite but fleeting, as if they knew something the couple didn't. The moving truck groaned under the weight of their belongings. Boxes of books, Sarah's art supplies, Tom's coding gear, and by dusk, the manor swallowed their possessions with an unsettling ease. The high ceilings echoed with their footsteps, and the walls, clad in faded wallpaper, seemed to absorb the sound rather than reflect it. Sarah joked about hosting Halloween parties in the cavernous dining room, imagining carved pumpkins flickering on the porch. Tom, ever practical, was already mentally cataloguing repairs. A leaky faucet, a loose banister, the faint draft that snaked through every room. They toasted with cheap wine that night, sprawled on a mattress in the master bedroom, laughing about their new adventure. But as the moon rose, casting shadows through the stained glass, the house felt less like a home and more like a presence, watchful and still. Sleep didn't come easily. At 3:13 a.m., Sarah bolted upright, her heart hammering. A sound had woken her, not the wind or the creak of settling wood, but something deliberate, a slow scraping noise, like fingernails dragging inside the walls, testing the plaster's strength. She held her breath, straining to hear it again. The room was silent, but the air felt thick, pressing against her skin. She nudged Tom, whispering, "Did you hear that?" He groaned, half asleep, his voice groggy with dismissal. "Old pipes, babe. Or maybe the wind. Go back to sleep." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the sound wasn't mechanical. It was purposeful, almost curious. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, where shadows seemed to pool unnaturally, defying the moonlight's angle. The house was quiet now, but it wasn't asleep. It was listening. By morning, the unease lingered, though sunlight softened the manor's edges. Sarah brewed coffee in the outdated kitchen, the linoleum sticky under her bare feet. The metallic tang in the air was faint but persistent, like blood left to congeal in some hidden corner. She chalked it up to rust in the pipes, but the smell followed her through the house, growing stronger near the walls. Tom, already troubleshooting the Wi-Fi, laughed off her complaints. "Old houses have quirks," he said, tapping away at his laptop. "We'll get a plumber out here next week." But as he spoke, the floorboards creaked in the hallway, a slow, rhythmic groan that mimicked footsteps, pacing just out of sight. Sarah froze, her mug trembling in her hands. Tom didn't notice, his focus on the screen, but she felt the house's attention shift toward her, heavy and deliberate, The next few days were a blur of unpacking and settling in. Sarah set up her design studio in a sunlit room on the second floor, though the light seemed to dim unnaturally by midday, as if the house was swallowing it. She noticed other oddities, mirrors that fogged when she passed, reflecting not her face, but fleeting shapes, blurred hands, half-formed eyes that vanished when she blinked. Tom, coming home from his tech job in Philly, dismissed it as her imagination, but even he hesitated at night when the floorboards groaned in patterns that felt like they were circling the bed. The metallic smell grew stronger, seeping from the walls like sweat, and the drafts weren't cold but warm, like breath on their necks. Sarah tried to laugh it off, blaming her artist's mind, but her sketches began to change. Sharp, jagged lines, faces she didn't recognize, staring back from the paper. On the fifth day, while Tom was at work, Sarah ventured into the attic to sort through boxes left by the previous owners. The air up there was stale, thick with dust and that ever-present metallic tang. The floorboards were uneven, some loose, and one caught her eye. A plank that seemed to pulse faintly under her touch, warm as living flesh. She pried it up with a screwdriver, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a journal, its leather cover cracked and unnaturally warm, as if it had been waiting for her. The pages were brittle, stained with dark, oily smears that looked too much like blood. Dated 1897, it belonged to Eliza Hawthorne, the manor's first occupant. "The house is alive," Eliza wrote in a trembling hand. "It knows my sins, my lies, my shame. It whispers them back, demanding more." Sarah's breath caught, her fingers trembling as she read on. The attic grew darker, though the sun still burned outside, and the air pulsed with a low rhythmic thrum, like a heartbeat waking up. The journal's words burrowed into her mind. "It took my son when I tried to hide the truth." Sarah slammed it shut, her pulse racing, but the attic door creaked, inching open, as if the house were inviting her to stay. The manor was no longer just a house. It was alive, and it was watching. Sarah felt its gaze in every shadow, every creak, every mirror that refused to reflect her true face. She wanted to tell Tom, to pack their things, and leave, but something in her, a mix of fear and curiosity, kept her rooted. The journal burned in her hands, its weight heavier than it should have been, and the house seemed to hum with approval, as if it had chosen her. That night, as she lay beside Tom, the scraping returned, louder, closer, no longer confined to the walls, but slithering across the ceiling, circling above their bed. The house wasn't settling. It was waking, and it was hungry. Sarah clutched the journal, its cracked leather warm against her palms, as if it had been waiting for her touch. The attic of Elmwood Manor felt smaller now, the air thick with dust, and that persistent metallic tang, like blood seeping from unseen wounds. Eliza Hawthorne's words, scrawled in 1897, burned into her mind. "The house is alive. It knows my sins, my lies, my shame. It whispers them back, demanding more." Each page grew more frantic, the ink trembling, as Eliza described a house that fed on secrets, pulling them from her like threads from a fraying seam. "It took my son when I tried to hide the truth," she wrote, her handwriting jagged, as if scratched under duress. "It knows my husband's affair, my thefts, my rage, things I never spoke aloud." The final entry was a smear of blood and ink. "It's in the walls, in the earth. It hungers. I fed it my boy, and now it wants me." Sarah's hands shook as she snapped the journal shut, her breath shallow. The attic door slammed, though no breeze stirred the stale air, and the floorboards creaked, not under her weight, but in a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if the house were pacing around her. She stumbled downstairs, the journal clutched to her chest, telling herself it was madness. Lead poisoning, grief, some rational explanation for Eliza's ravings. But the manor felt different now, its high ceilings looming like a predator's maw, its stained glass windows casting fractured shadows that seemed to writhe. The metallic smell was stronger, seeping from the walls like damp rot, and the air carried a weight, as if the house were exhaling, its breath warm and sour. Sarah hid the journal in a drawer, unwilling to show Tom yet, afraid he'd laugh it off as he had the scraping sounds. He was due home from his tech job in Philly, and she needed his logic to anchor her, to drown out the unease that coiled in her gut. That night, as they lay in the master bedroom, the whispers began. They weren't mechanical, not pipes or wind, but a chorus of voices, rasping like dry leaves dragged over bone, slithering from the walls like venomous mist. "Sarah, we know what you did." Her heart stopped, her body rigid under the sheets. The voices were layered, some ancient, some cruel, others impossibly familiar, all woven into a single, suffocating presence. That summer in college, the party, you left her to die. Sarah's breath caught, her vision blurring with panic. No one knew, not Tom, not her family, not even Claire herself. At 19, drunk on cheap vodka at a frat house, Sarah had brushed off her best friend's pleas for a ride. Claire, too drunk to drive, had crashed, her spine shattered, her life confined to a wheelchair. Sarah had buried the guilt, a secret so deep it was a phantom limb, but the house knew. It knew. She pressed her ear to the wall, feeling it pulse like a vein under the faded wallpaper, warm and alive. "Tell us more, or we take him." Tom stirred beside her, his face pale in the moonlight. "What's that?" he whispered, his voice tight. He heard it too now, the whispers shifting their focus. "Tom, the code you stole, the colleague you betrayed." He sat up, eyes wide, his breath ragged. "That's not real," he stammered, but the house pressed harder, its voices sharper. "You took his work, claimed the promotion, ruined his life." Sarah watched him crumble, his denial faltering. Years ago, he'd lifted proprietary code from a co-worker, passing it off as his own to secure a corner office. He'd never confessed, not even to her, but the house peeled back his secrets like skin. The air thickened, oppressive, the walls seeming to contract, as if the manor were a lung drawing them in. Savoring their fear, they tried to flee, stumbling to the front door, but it wouldn't budge, not locked, but fused, the wood grain rippling like muscle under their hands. Sarah grabbed a chair and swung at a window. It bled, dark ichor oozing down the pane, pooling on the sill with a hiss. The metallic stench choked them, burning their throats, and the voices grew louder, a relentless loop of their sins. "You let her die. You stole his work." Tom clawed at his ears, blood trickling between his fingers, his eyes wild as the whispers burrowed into his skull. "Make it stop," he shouted, but the house only laughed, a low guttural hum that vibrated through the floorboards. By morning, they were hollow-eyed, barely speaking. Sarah, driven by a mix of fear and defiance, tore at the parlor wallpaper, desperate for answers. Layer after layer peeled back like flayed skin, revealing not plaster, but wood, etched with confessions in jagged script. "I poisoned my wife, 1903. I buried the child in the cellar, 1927. I sold their souls for power, 1981. Each name, each sin was a trophy, carved into the house's flesh." Sarah's hands trembled as she realized the manor wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was a predator, built on a cursed seam of earth that craved human guilt, growing stronger with every secret it consumed. The floorboards creaked behind her, though she was alone, a slow, deliberate rhythm that matched her heartbeat. The air grew colder, the shadows thicker, as if the house were pleased she'd uncovered its truth. She backed away, the journal's weight heavy in her mind, its words echoing with the voices. Feed us, or we take you. The manor was no longer a home, but a living thing, its pulse throbbing through every wall, every creak, every shadow. Sarah felt its gaze, not just watching, but probing, peeling back the layers of her soul. She wanted to burn the journal, to tell Tom they had to leave, but the house's hum grew louder, a satisfied purr that seemed to say it had chosen them. The metallic smell was suffocating now, seeping from every surface, and the mirrors no longer reflected their faces, but twisted shapes. Claire's accusing eyes, Tom's betrayed colleague, faces of strangers from decades past. The house was hungry, and it was only beginning to feed. The whispers had become screams, a relentless chorus that clawed at Sarah and Tom's sanity, filling Elmwood Manor with a cacophony of voices, some ancient, some fresh, some sounding like Claire's, twisted and accusing. You let her die. You stole his work. You lied, you lied, you lied. The house was alive, its pulse throbbing through every wall, every floorboard. A rhythmic hum that synced with their racing hearts. The air was rancid, thick with a metallic stench that coated their throats, like blood seeping from unseen wounds. Sleep was a distant memory, their eyes bloodshot, their skin clammy under the weight of the manor's oppressive atmosphere. The walls seemed to close in, not visibly, but palpably, as if the house were a living lung, inhaling their fear, savoring their guilt. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched a kitchen knife, her mind replaying Eliza Hawthorne's journal. It hungers. It took my son, Tom, usually anchored by logic, was unraveling, his face pale, his fingers digging into his scalp as if he could tear the voices out. They tried to call for help, fumbling with their phones, but the screen showed full bars, yet no signal. The calls dropping into a void of static that hissed with faint whispers. The lights flickered, casting shadows that defied the bulb's rhythm. Hands reaching, eyes blinking, faces forming only to dissolve when they looked directly. The mirrors were worse, no longer reflecting their haggard faces, but showing glimpses of others. Claire's tear-streaked face from that college party, a co-worker Tom had betrayed, and strangers with hollow eyes, their mouths moving silently as if confessing sins of their own. The metallic smell grew unbearable, seeping from the walls like sweat, and the air felt warm, almost sticky, as if the house were breathing on them, its exhales hot and sour. Sarah, driven by a mix of panic and defiance, grabbed a sledgehammer from the basement, its weight grounding her as she stormed into the parlor. The wallpaper, already torn from her earlier discovery, hung in strips like flayed skin, revealing the etched confessions. I poisoned my wife, 1903. I buried the child in the cellar, 1927. I sold their souls for power, 1981. She swung the sledgehammer, desperate to break the house's hold. The wall split with a wet, tearing sound, not like plaster, but like flesh, revealing a mass of writhing tendrils, glistening, veined, pulsing like a heart exposed to air. The house screamed, a bone-rattling wail that shook the chandelier, sending crystal shards raining down, slicing Sarah's arm as she staggered back. Black ichor poured from the wound in the wall, burning the floorboards with a hiss, filling the air with a stench of rot and iron that made her gag. You can't leave, the voices thundered. No longer a chorus, but a single deafening presence, layered with every soul the house had claimed. Feed us, or become us. Tom, his eyes wild with terror, bolted for the front door, his footsteps heavy on the creaking floorboards. We have to get out, he shouted, his voice cracking. But the boards split open, roots of wood and flesh coiling around his legs like serpents, their surfaces slick and pulsating. They yanked him down, his body folding unnaturally, knees bending backward, arms twisting as the floor swallowed him. Sarah watched, paralyzed, as his face pressed against the inside of the wall, a grotesque, translucent imprint, his mouth gaping in a silent howl, eyes wide with betrayal, the plaster smoothed over, erasing him, leaving only a faint ripple, like water closing over a drowned man. The house sighed, a low, satisfied rumble that vibrated through her bones, but its hunger shifted to her, the voices sharpening. Sarah, you could have saved her. You chose yourself. Her legs gave out, the sledgehammer clattering to the floor. The ichus pulled around her, its heat searing her skin, and the voices burrowed deeper, replaying Claire's pleas from that college night, the screech of tires, the sirens that came too late. She crawled to the basement stairs, the last refuge, the air growing thicker with every step, the metallic stench, now mingled with something organic, like decaying flesh. The walls down there were slick, coated in a pulsating slime that seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding in rhythm with the house's pulse. In the corner, she found a trapdoor, its wood throbbing like a heartbeat, warm under her trembling hands. She pried it open with a crowbar, the hinges screaming as if in pain. Below was not earth, but a maw, a gaping throat of splintered wood, lined with jagged teeth, tendrils writhing in its depths. Like a nest of eels, it spoke her name in her own voice, distorted and ravenous. Sarah, join us. Give us your guilt. Her mind frayed, memories unraveling, Claire's pleading eyes, the weight of a decade's shame. Every moment she'd chosen silence over confession. The maw pulsed, its teeth gleaming, drawing her closer, her body inching forward as if pulled by invisible hands. The air was suffocating, the voices now a deafening roar, blending her guilt with Tom's, with Eliza's, with centuries of devoured souls. Her fingers brushed the edge of the trapdoor, the wood warm and slick, like touching a living heart. She felt herself slipping, her secrets peeling away like skin, feeding the house's endless hunger. The tendrils reached up, brushing her ankles, their touch cold and greedy, and the maw's breath was hot, promising oblivion if she'd only surrender. Sarah's vision blurred, her body trembling, but a spark of defiance flickered deep within her, a refusal to let the house consume her whole. Sarah teetered on the edge of the trapdoor, the Maw of Elmwood Manor pulsing below her, its splintered wooden teeth glinting in the dim basement light, tendrils writhing like a nest of serpents, hungry for her soul. The air was suffocating, thick with the stench of rotting flesh and iron. The house's heartbeat throbbing through the slick, pulsating walls. The voices, now a deafening roar of her own guilt, Tom's betrayal, Claire's accusing cries, and centuries of devoured sins, clawed at her mind, urging her to surrender. Sarah, join us. Give us your guilt. Her body leaned forward, drawn by the maw's pull, her memories unraveling. The college party where she'd laughed off Claire's pleas, the screech of tires, the sirens too late to save her friend's legs. The house knew every buried truth, peeling them from her.
Please like and subscribe channel Mindset Shift. Thank you.